The first knock came at 6 a.m. sharp. It wasn't the kind of knock that asked politely to be heard. It was the kind that demanded attention, sharp, cold, and entitled. David Langston, a hardworking father in his early 40s, rubbed his tired eyes as he shuffled toward the front door of his modest but well-kept home. He had just finished a night shift driving trucks, barely 2 hours of rest behind him. When he opened the door, he was met with two figures standing tall in freshly pressed suits, clipboards in hand. Their lips curled into forced smiles that didn't reach their eyes. "Mr. Langston," the taller one said, his tone already dripping with authority. "We're with the Homeowners Association. We need to talk." Behind them, the sun was rising, painting the sky in warm orange. But in that moment, David felt a coldness creep into his chest. "Talk about what?" he asked slowly. The shorter man flipped a page on his clipboard. "Violations." That one word hit like a slap. Violations? David glanced around his yard. His lawn was trimmed, his driveway clean, the paint on his little brick house still fresh from the summer before. There was nothing wrong here, at least nothing any neighbor could complain about in good faith. Still, the man read aloud. "Your grass height exceeds HOA standards. Your trash cans are visible from the street. And," he paused for effect, looking David dead in the eye, "your vehicle, that old pickup, is an eyesore to the community." David's hands tightened on the doorframe. That old pickup was the truck he used to make his living, the very thing that kept food on the table for his wife and their two kids. The taller man leaned in, his voice lower now, almost smug. "You have 30 days to comply, or face removal proceedings." David blinked. "Removal proceedings? From my own home?" The man's smile widened. "That's correct. The HOA reserves the right to revoke residency for non-compliance." And just like that, the battle line was drawn. David Langston, a man who had broken his back to provide for his family, was being told that the home he had worked years to secure could be snatched away over grass height and a pickup truck. He looked past the men across the street, where the houses owned by his white neighbors had trash bins out, patchy lawns, even broken shutters. Not one of them was under attack. This wasn't about rules. This was about him. His chest tightened with both fear and fury. For the first time in his life, David realized something chilling. The place he thought was his family's sanctuary was really a battlefield. And the HOA had just declared war. At first, David tried to brush it off. Maybe it was just a mistake. Maybe if he fixed the so-called violations, the HOA would leave him and his family alone. So he moved his trash bins behind the fence. He mowed the lawn twice in 1 week. He even parked his old pickup truck around the corner at a friend's house, walking an extra block every night after his long shifts. But it wasn't enough. 2 weeks later, another letter arrived. Bold red print stamped across the top. Final notice. This time the violations had grown. They claimed his mailbox was 2 inches taller than regulation height. His backyard shed, built by the previous owner, was labeled unauthorized construction. Even the basketball hoop his kids loved playing on was listed as a neighborhood disturbance. It was as if the HOA had a magnifying glass over his property, searching for anything they could use to tear him down. David sat at his kitchen table, the letter trembling in his calloused hands. Across from him, his wife Angela, a soft-spoken woman in her late 30s with tired eyes from working double shifts as a nurse, looked at him with worry. "They're targeting us," she whispered. "You know why?" David didn't answer, but deep down he knew. He had seen the way some of the neighbors looked at him and his family when they first moved in. The stares, the whispers. A black family in a neighborhood they weren't supposed to afford. And now the HOA was doing what those whispers could not, forcing them out. Angela reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. "We can't let them win." But the fight was already getting harder. Within days the harassment spread. Anonymous complaints were filed. HOA board members began circling his property like vultures, snapping pictures with their phones. One evening, as David pulled into his driveway after a long shift, he found a bright orange sticker plastered across his front door. "Warning, NO in compliance, eviction imminent." His kids stood behind him on the porch, clutching his legs, their faces filled with fear. "Daddy, are we gonna lose our house?" his son asked, his small voice trembling. David's throat tightened. He wanted to say no. He wanted to promise them safety. But the truth was, he didn't know. That night he barely slept. The image of his children's frightened faces haunted him. And as he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, something inside of him shifted. He had played by their rules. He had complied. He had bent over backward. And still they wanted him gone. It wasn't about grass. It wasn't about mailboxes. It was about control. About reminding him that no matter how hard he worked, some people still thought he didn't belong. By morning, David Langston made a decision. If the HOA wanted a fight, then a fight was what they were going to get. And this time he wouldn't play by their rules. David starts digging into the HOA itself, and what he finds is far worse, and far more corrupt, than any of their accusations against him. David Langston wasn't a lawyer. He wasn't rich. He didn't have connections at City Hall. But what he did have was grit. He started small. He went back and pulled every single letter the HOA had sent him, each notice, each so-called violation. He spread them out across the kitchen table like pieces of a puzzle. His wife Angela sat across from him, her exhaustion clear, but her resolve steady. "These don't even match," she muttered, tapping the papers. "Look, one says the mailbox has to be exactly 42 inches high. The next says 44. They can't even keep their own rules straight." David's eyes narrowed. "They don't want me to follow the rules. They want me gone." But then came the turning point. At his job in construction, one of his co-workers mentioned how HOA boards often had to file annual financial statements, public records most homeowners never thought to check. That night, David sat at his old laptop, his fingers flying across the keyboard, and what he uncovered made his blood run cold. Tens of thousands of dollars, supposedly collected from homeowners' dues, had no clear explanation. Payments marked for community improvements, but no improvements ever done. Even worse, the HOA president, Evelyn Porter, a sharp-faced woman in her early 60s with perfectly coiffed gray hair and pearl earrings, had signed off on questionable contracts with companies owned by her relatives. Angela leaned over his shoulder, whispering, "She's been stealing from all of us." But David wasn't shocked. Not really. He knew power like this was rarely clean. What did shock him was how sloppy they had been, almost as if they thought no one would ever dare to look. The next HOA meeting was scheduled for Friday night. David circled the date on the calendar, his jaw set. When the night came, the community center was packed. Homeowners sat in folding chairs, murmuring about dues, landscaping, and petty complaints. At the front sat Evelyn Porter and the rest of the board, smug and untouchable. Evelyn tapped her gavel, her voice cool and commanding. "Let's move on to the next order of business, the matter of Mr. Langston's continued violations." The room went quiet. Dozens of eyes turned toward David, waiting for his shame. But instead of shrinking, David stood. He held up a thick manila folder and spoke, his voice steady but sharp enough to cut glass. "Actually," he said, "I think the community deserves to hear about your violations." Gasps rippled across the room. Evelyn's eyes widened for just a fraction of a second before her mask of superiority returned. "Mr. Langston, this is not the time." David cut her off. "I have financial records showing that thousands of our dues, money we all paid, went into contracts with companies owned by your family. And those so-called improvement projects you've been billing us for? They don't exist." The room erupted. Murmurs turned into angry shouts. Homeowners craned their necks, whispering, demanding answers. Evelyn's cool facade began to crack. "You don't know what you're talking about," she snapped, her pearls trembling against her collarbone. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about," David shot back. He opened the folder and pulled out copies of the records, waving them in the air. "And if you don't explain it to us right here, right now, I'm prepared to take these to the county auditor and the local news." The board froze. Evelyn's hand gripped the gavel, but for once she couldn't slam it down. For the first time since moving into that neighborhood, David saw something in her eyes that gave him strength. Fear. Evelyn won't go down quietly. She will fight back, try to smear David further. But the tide has turned, and this war is about to end in poetic justice. The room was in chaos. Neighbors shouted over one another, demanding to see the records, demanding Evelyn Porter explain where their money had gone. For years, Evelyn had ruled with icy control, her gavel like a hammer of authority. But now, her face flushed red, her words stumbled, her hand trembled. This is slander," she barked. "Mr. Langston is twisting facts. The board has full authority over expenditures. If you don't like it, you can save it," one man interrupted, rising from the crowd. He was an older resident, soft-spoken, who rarely said a word at meetings. His voice now cut through the noise like thunder. "I've been paying dues for 20 years. I want to know where my money went." Others joined in. "Me too. Show us the receipts." "We trusted you, Evelyn." Evelyn's composure cracked. Her eyes darted left and right, seeking backup from the board members beside her. But the other board members shrank in their seats, unwilling to share her downfall. David pressed forward, his voice calm but unrelenting. "You used your power to bully, to intimidate, to silence people like me. But what you didn't count on, what you never counted on, was that the truth would catch up to you. And now it has." He laid the records down on the table in front of her. One by one, homeowners surged forward to see them for themselves. Gasps filled the room as the proof became undeniable. Evelyn had drained the community dry for her own gain. By the end of the meeting, the chants had started. "Vote her out. Vote her out." Evelyn slammed her gavel, desperate, but the power was gone from her hands. For the first time, she wasn't in control. And within weeks, she was not only voted off the board but facing a county investigation. But here's the twist that no one saw coming. With Evelyn gone, the neighborhood needed new leadership. People looked around, searching for someone who had the courage to stand up for fairness, someone who could be trusted to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. All eyes turned to David. At first he resisted. He hadn't fought this battle for power. He had fought for respect, for his family's right to live in peace. But when neighbors came to his door, one after another, asking him to run, thanking him for his courage, David realized this was bigger than just him. He accepted. And when the vote came, David Langston, the man once humiliated over the height of his mailbox, the man nearly ruined by false fines and fabricated violations, was elected HOA president by a landslide. The same gavel Evelyn had once slammed to silence him was now in his hand. But David didn't use it to intimidate or to control. He used it to restore fairness, to bring transparency, and to ensure no one in that neighborhood ever felt powerless again. This story isn't just about an HOA. It's about life. It's about the powerful who think their money or titles make them untouchable, and the everyday people who are underestimated, ignored, or pushed aside. The lesson? Never mistake humility for weakness. Never mistake silence for submission. And never forget, the truth has a way of breaking through, even against the loudest lies. What about you? Have you ever been underestimated or treated unfairly, only to turn the tables in the end? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear your story. And if you believe justice, dignity, and courage deserve a platform, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Because here we tell the stories they don't want you to hear.